They called in a New Jerseyan to do the interview. Thank you so much. I'm hacking my way through those questions based on your remarks. You know, you talked about energy costs, the state of emergency you declared on utility bills first day in office, also an emphasis on supply side. You talked about lifting the 50-year moratorium on nuclear. I think what has gotten less attention, and it was what is perhaps more interesting as other states think about how to contend with this, is the way in which you've really gone toe-to-toe with the regional grid operators. And I wonder if you can talk about the role they play in rising energy costs, where you have found success, and what of that success you think is replicable elsewhere.
This has been a really interesting area, and I can tell you, I, like most people in New Jersey, could not have told you what PJM was. Somebody said, I don't know what a PJM is. That is our regional grid operator. It stands for Pennsylvania, Jersey, and Maryland, which came together and now represents a lot of the Eastern Seaboard and as far west as at least Illinois. And they have been a really bad actor in this. They've taken 6 years to get power online. They haven't planned strategically very well for the future. And the board is largely made up of oil and fossil fuel people who want to put that kind of power in the grid. So we've seen a lot of the more environmentally secure programs languishing and sort of left on the table. And they just haven't been quick to act. And this is actually an interesting area where a lot of our states are aligned with the White House on some of what needs to be done here. And PJM has continued and remains a bad actor in this space. They're not meeting the moment. So I've worked, the way we found the best leverage is to work with other states and with the courts. So for example, I said that our power rates went up by 20% last year. They were set to go up by another 20% this year. Last year kind of broke the bank of a lot of people, especially on a fixed income. This year was going to double it. And so Governor Shapiro had worked to put a price collar on some of the rate increases. That really had a huge impact on our ability to keep costs lower and to keep them down for consumers. But it's really working with the other governors in the region that's holding PJM accountable. They are not moving on their own to act in a better way.
You talked a little bit in your remarks about AI data centers. Let's talk about the factors that contributed to high energy prices last summer. So there was just a really hot summer. That was part of what was going on. There were supply shortages, higher prices from the regional grid operator, which we just talked about, and then this growing demand from AI data centers. This week, you had more than 60 environmental, labor, and community organizations calling on you to impose a moratorium on new data centers that use at least 20 megawatts of electricity until stronger regulations are put in place. Do you think a moratorium is the answer?
We have got to make sure that we are balancing a lot of needs here. I, for example, represent the most densely populated state in the nation, one of the most environmentally sensitive states in the nation. The sea rise for New Jersey will impact New Jersey more than any state in our nation. So we have to be incredibly thoughtful about how we're using space and resources. We also run the most high-end workforce in the nation. We have more scientists and engineers per square mile than anywhere else, and we have always innovated. We, from Thomas Jefferson, or now I'm blanking, Edison. I wanted to say Thomas Jefferson, so my friend Abigail Spanberger could troll me. But from Thomas Edison onwards, we have really represented one of the most innovative states in the nation. We have to innovate for our workforce. Those are the jobs our kids are going to have, and that's how we're going to manage this transition. So with that in mind, we're going to put out our data center plan next week. We're announcing it, getting engaged and demanding both that we have appropriate use of our resources, that data centers bring their own power. We've seen costs go up in large part because of Virginia under the last governor really just added unmitigated data centers, and they're part of our grid. And so they drove energy cost up tremendously. So we have had several data centers come to some of our utility operators saying, look, we want to hook to the grid. And the utilities have said, no, we don't have that power. They've got to start bringing their own. And they've got to do so in a responsible way. We've also seen some new resources where they can use different cooling mechanisms so they're not using as much water. That's something we're going to demand. And we're also going to ensure that the community is not negatively impacted by this. So there are appropriate places to build data centers. We're not going to be a state that builds these huge data farms like they do out west or in states with a lot of land. We will we have about 80 data centers, and most people don't even know that they exist because they're smaller. They're in offices, and they run, like I said, the back offices for banks and stuff like that.
We've talked about energy. I want to make sure that we talk about housing, especially given that New Jersey has such an incredible history when it comes to creating affordable housing. So for the non-New Jerseyans in the room, 1975, a lot of working class Latino and Black citizens, along with the local NAACP, sue the town of Mount Laurel saying, you're using your zoning laws to discriminate, and that is why we can't find affordable housing here. Those advocates win at the New Jersey Supreme Court. The Mount Laurel framework goes into effect. It is then codified by your predecessor, Governor Murphy, and now other states, California, Massachusetts, Montana, Texas, they're all looking at what we have done in New Jersey as a model for what is possible when it comes to zoning and other things that are at the state's discretion. When you talk to your corollaries in those states, what is it you tell them about what you can learn from the success and failures we've had in New Jersey?
So it's really interesting you bring up Mount Laurel because that has put us in a better place than most states in the area as far as continuing to build out our housing stock, but it's not enough. So it was sort of necessary but not sufficient, really. And what I mean by that is in some areas of my state in the last 5 years, housing prices have gone up by 60%. We are hearing from young people who can't afford homes. In fact, I was speaking to one police officer who was telling me that he said, I've got some guys on the force who are living with their moms, and I was making fun of them until I realized, there's just really no way for them to afford to move out right now. And they're making a good salary. And we hear that story again and again and again. And so what we need to do is have a sort of reinvigoration of how we're going to build housing across New Jersey. And we have to do it in a really thoughtful way because, as I mentioned, we are the most densely populated and environmentally sensitive. We can't build on wetlands. We need to make sure we're doing this in a thoughtful way. But we also have a lot of underutilized property, especially state-owned property. And this is why I just pass an executive order, because this is an area where, as governor, I have a great deal of authority on state-owned property so that we can build out about 20,000 housing units on property that, especially state-owned property, especially like the Department of Transportation, think things like underutilized parking lots or other areas where an old warehouse that nobody uses anymore. So we can actually repurpose that area, which is right now some of the most desirable area for people who want to live in transit-oriented development spaces. So we're really excited about this. It's going to be a good step. There's a lot more we're going to do.
I mean, in general, in preparing for this interview, I was reading all of the critiques of the first few months, the lauding of the first few months, and my overall sense was this. On energy, on housing, she is doing everything she can possibly do, and yet a lot of it requires a long tail, and short-term relief remains the trickiest element of all of these affordability questions. And so I wonder for you, as you communicate with voters about the fact that relief is forthcoming, but it may not be there today the way that people want to feel it. How do you bridge that gap?
It's really tough for a couple of reasons. So, for example, I froze utility rates, but utility costs just went up 20% last year. People don't just want rates frozen, they want rates to go down. We just had an incredibly cold winter with 2 epic snowstorms. One of them came in the weekend after I got into office. So with this in mind, people aren't just satisfied with me, freezing rate hikes. So that's why we're expanding power. At the same time, at every turn, the president's driving up rates. So when whether you're talking interest rates, grocery prices because of illegal tariffs, the gas prices because of his illegal war, I mean, here we are desperately trying to drive down costs. And at the same time, he continues to drive them up to and including now with like our healthcare system. So we got about $1 billion hit to our state budget this year from HR 1. We anticipate it'll be about a $5 billion hit next year. And that's not even taking into account the extra money we've had to spend for counties to run programs that the federal government had run. And we're continuing to see attack after attack. So I think, you know, it's communicating nonstop about what we're doing. And at the same time, driving those costs down where we can. So community solar is a really good way in which we can actually immediately drive down costs while talking about nuclear and how we're looking to do that in the long term. I think what people in New Jersey want to understand is somebody's handling this problem. Somebody is taking this on. That's my job. And so maybe they can sleep at night because they know that I'm doing every single thing I can to chart out this future. And we've got a great plan and we've got a great team.
We've got 2 minutes, but let's try to sneak in the Gateway Tunnel project, of course, stalled by the president. You're welcome. You have called the Gateway Tunnel project the nation's most urgent infrastructure project. Tell me why.
So the Gateway Tunnel project is the largest program of national significance that we are running. It is the Hudson. It's a new Hudson River tunnel. The old one is over 100 years old. It was damaged in Superstorm Sandy. And if you ever have the pleasure of taking this like glass-backed train to see the rail, it goes from about 6 rail lines to 2, 1 in, 1 out. So it's a really strategic choke point. It's a point of failure in our system, and it's becoming harder and harder for people to commute. And about, it could be worth too, as we're developing this out, about 100,000 good jobs in the region. So illegally, Trump cut off the money. So he just cut off the money. It was not his money to cut off. So people were telling me, well, just give him what he wants. Just end your DEI programs and give him DHS funding or name Penn Station after him. Why not? What do you care? Just get it done. And, the problem is he just finds what you want and then he leverages and he never actually gives you the money. So playing that game is ineffective. So I said, and we had to work with New York on this as well. I said, look, we got to get in court immediately. People are getting pink slips. I was talking to one guy whose child's severely autistic. He's like, I'm not sure where this healthcare is going to go right now. I'm really scared. So this was something we had to handle immediately. And that's what we did. We got right in court and we beat him. He appealed. We beat him again. We're now in court for damages because he held us up. So that's the way to fight this. I think a strong, aggressive move and making sure you can deliver.
Ladies and gentlemen, the governor of the great state of New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill.